In the world of commercial photography, you will always be issuing a license for your work. Even from the start of your career, even if you're doing free work, there must always be a license outlined in a contract explaining how your client can use the images. And I cannot emphasize that enough. But what happens when we get questioned on this concept of licensing? More often than not, smaller brands may not fully understand why they don't own the photos they purchased from you. Unless you hand over full rights, you will always own the copyright to your work. And your client simply has a license to use these photos for specific purposes in their business. So how do we explain to clients that they don't own the photos and that they might have to pay additional fees for specific kinds of usage? Let's break it down. So you've got a project and you've delivered the images. The licensing you've issued is only for organic and paid social media, website, and email marketing. The client has been happily posting the work on their Instagram account, but they've got this amazing opportunity to now promote their product on a billboard in Times Square in New York City using one of your images. Essentially what this means is this particular image you shot for your client will go up in value if they use it on a billboard in Times Square compared to just posting it on Instagram. And the reason that it will go up in value is because most likely this image is going to make them a ton of sales. In other words, it could make them a lot of money. They think your image is good enough to be used to promote their product to millions of people. And so you as the photographer have given immense value to this brand for them to do this. Your creative work, your art is good enough for them to go, oh my God, this image is amazing. I know it's going to attract people's eyes to my products. So I'm going to use this on a billboard. Do you think that you deserve to get paid for that? To be compensated for that? 1000% yes, you do. And that's why we don't just hand out licensing for every type of marketing channel when we onboard a client. Let's liken it to, say, a house. Say you built a house in an up-and-coming suburb, and in 5 years, that suburb is hot stuff. Maybe there's been a lot of development, maybe it's the location, so the house has appreciated in value. Now, would you sell the house for the same price you bought it for? No way. You'd be selling that house for what it's worth in the current market. Same goes for your images. And that's why we put a duration on the licensing as well. So say you work with a small brand at the beginning and in 5 years' time they totally blow up. They're huge. They're everywhere. And they still think that your work is good enough to promote their products with. So they're using your work to run paid ads. Your work is still on their website, etc., etc. So again, you've obviously brought immense value to that brand by producing amazing content that is continuously helping them make money. Do you think that you should be compensated for that? 1000% yes. Your work would have gone up in value because that brand has a lot more eyes on their marketing and therefore is likely making them more money. So say you charged them $50 for that photo years ago when you were at the beginning stages of your photography business, and now they're potentially making thousands of dollars from that one photo, but yet you still own the copyright and you didn't put a duration of time on that photo. That brand is profiting off your work that you own the copyright to on a continuous basis. Just let that sink in for a second. And honestly, this is how commercial photographers can make a lot of money in licensing. So I hope that explanation enables you to see that you provide a lot of value to brands with your photography skills, and you deserve to be fairly compensated for your creative work that can generate thousands of dollars in sales on a continuous basis. So when a client asks you about licensing, it's probably helpful for you to jump onto a phone call with them and explain how your images can appreciate in value over time. And when a brand engages you for work, they probably wouldn't be planning on promoting their product on a billboard in Times Square at the time of the project. Therefore, it doesn't make sense for you to charge for that kind of usage right up front. So if a client asks, well, why can't you just give me a full license to use it however I want? You then explain that by issuing them a license, it's more affordable for the brand because they're only paying for what they need. If they don't plan to promote on billboards, then they're not being charged for that usage placement. And by brands asking for a full copyright buyout, essentially what this means is that they have full rights to your photos and can use them however they want for however long they want. You no longer own your work. And this is why copyright buyouts are typically out of scope for a lot of brands, because they just simply cannot afford the buyout. We're talking in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the project. Maybe you're still hearing this, but I still don't understand why I don't own the photos. I mean, I paid for them. Let's use another analogy. Say you purchase a song on iTunes. You paid $2 for that song. Do you own it just because you paid to listen to it? No. The artist owns that song. They created the work. They own the rights. You have a license to listen to that song. It's the same with photos. You took the photo. You came up with creative, probably. You pressed the shutter button on the camera, not the client. You did all the other work. Just because they paid for it, it doesn't mean that they own it. And at the end of the day, some brands still may not fully grasp why they need to pay for licensing or what it actually is. And if that happens, and if you don't feel you're being fairly compensated for your work, then they're not your dream client, and there are plenty of others out there for you to find. It's important you listen to your client's needs though, and you find a compromise that you're both happy with. I know licensing can be a real bitch to navigate. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know everything about licensing, because I really don't. I'm still navigating it myself with my own pricing and my clients. And I just try to assess each project as it comes. But what I do know is that with every single project I do, I learn something new. And I just further tweak a little bit further that helps me with the next project. Especially if you're a new photographer, just don't put pressure on yourself thinking that you have to get licensing right the first time. And when you're a new photographer, you're most likely targeting small brands who they're just so small you won't be charging like exorbitant licensing fees, if really any at all, because they simply cannot afford it. When I started my product photography business and I was targeting small brands, the usual price that I would be charging was like $200 for like 5 photos, because that's all they could afford. And that was the market I was targeting. That was the market that I was in. And it gave me a lot of experience. Obviously now I charge a lot more than $200 for 5 photos. But think about the market that you are in and whether that requires, a lot of licensing information. But like I said at the beginning of the video, you should always still have a license outlined in your contract, regardless of whatever kind of work you do. Always have a contract, even for free work, and always dictate how the photos can be used. Otherwise, it may come back to bite you in the butt in the future, and we don't want that. But I hope that this video has explained why you should be fairly compensated for your work and what it means for you when your client wants to explore different licensing platforms. You created the work. You gave them this masterpiece. So you should be fairly compensated. So if you have any questions, let me know and I will try to answer them as best I can.